front face to the street is really attractive these days. Expands the grid. So one thing that's, every business wants to be on the main corner. There's 4 corners to a main intersection, and Walgreens usually gets one of them, right? Everybody wants that corner because it's where the high visibility is. But with a quadrant, you spread out and create more corners, more places that have not the visibility of the main intersection, but good enough visibility for plenty of kinds of uses. And so it expands the ability to develop out there. Let's see, let's move on now. So we've got town center intersections and one-way couplets. This is a really interesting one as well. So one of America's premier architects, Peter Calthorpe, puts this type of an intersection in virtually every plan that he does. And this is one that was built in San Diego area. So it's kind of fun because you see on the left the architectural drawing, and on the right is what it actually is, and you go to Google Earth and look at it. And the way this works, and the reason it works, is that before you would have had 2 highways coming together and one really big overworked signal and too much pavement, and it becomes nasty. This spreads it out and creates 4 signals instead of 1. But each of those 4 signals is a simple signal, a 2-phase signal, and where you can come up here and you take a free right turn. You can right turn on red. Over here you can left turn on red as well. That's part of the magic of this design. And it almost creates a little bit of a roundabout here. Sometimes they call this a squareabout. And this is a street level view of the same place. And this, look at how narrow this is. Very simple to walk across, the context of buildings and stuff. And this whole design supports a lot of traffic, but it doesn't feel like a lot of traffic. More views of the same kind of context. This is a design that I created just to say, you can also create a triplet. And a triplet is creating an alignment between the 2 splits. And that's a good feature for transit. It's challenging to do in an existing urban environment because you may not have the streets to do this with. But if you go out into places that are about to be developed, then very simple. You just say, well, let's create a grid in this area. We're planning on having a bus line or some kind of transit line go through here. And we'll create a pedestrian green space with the transit that goes through it, flanked by some pretty good vehicular access, and you could create a really nice walkable urban environment in the greenfield sections. So a little bit about town center intersections. These are the hot new item. Calthorpe puts them in all his plans. Lots of people are doing it, but they are not so, they're not new. They're just newly rediscovered. Downtown Portland is built on the concept of one-way couplets and the 2-way streets coming together and then diverging. Downtown Denver, same thing. Have anybody been to the 16th Street Mall before in Denver? Seen it? Very nice. It's a BRT basically that functions on the pedestrian mall. It's CNG buses that they move really slow, but every 2 minutes one comes. And they get 50,000 riders a day on that bus route, just on that little mall space. And the mall is only possible because these one-way streets are flanking it. That's what made it possible to offload the traffic that was previously on that street. Pearl Street in Boulder, same kind of a thing. They split the traffic around and created a pedestrian mall in the middle that's extremely successful. This is another Calthorpe design at Stapleton Airport in Denver. So they redeveloped the old airport, and he put in these one-way couplets and a little short one like this that crosses, and that's the context of buildings in that space. Downtown Boise is the same kind of a way. They have some little park spaces in here. Palm Springs, if anyone's been there, it has some one-way couplets there. And they move a lot of traffic, but they move it at 25 miles an hour because it's an extremely walkable space. Speed and capacity are not connected. They're a little bit connected, but not very much. You can still have a high throughput of traffic at an extremely slow speed if you want it to be that way. This is Logan, Utah, one of the plans I've worked on. They have a 5-lane road right now, 2 each direction, center turn lane, and then they've got parking on both sides. It adds up to 86 feet of pavement, only 22 feet left for anything else. And and if they can convert to couplets, which they very much want to do, they can reduce the traffic space down to 36 feet, and they get 47 feet out here in the other space. They can do angle parking, which is great for their historic downtown, and a lot of other uses that are exciting. This is one that talks about the context, or the walkability. We used a tool in which we were able to measure the improvement or unimprovement of the walkable environment. And the couplets, in this case, said relative to the two-way situation, the couplets will be extremely more walkable and pedestrian friendly. And the reasons are because the street can be narrowed quite a bit. You can dedicate a lot of that former pavement to other uses, so it improves the aesthetics and a lot of things like that. So amenities, and safer and smoother, and everybody's in favor of that. Median U-turns and ellipses, this is another concept that is pretty nice for walkability. In Michigan, this is called the Michigan left turn, median U-turn, if you've ever seen it or familiar with it. And the basic idea is, instead of turning left, you turn right, you get into you do a U-turn at a median and go this way. So Michigan set up like these really huge 40-foot medians all along some major highways. The rest of us look at that and say, well, we don't have 40-foot medians. We got to throw that one out the door then. Well, it's not true. We don't have 40-foot medians, but what we do have is old suburban shopping centers with an awful lot of parking that isn't getting used. And all you have to do is carve out a little spot somewhere to create an ellipse like this, and then the traffic can swing around and do that. And back here, it's advantageous to pedestrians because when there's left turns in the mix, you're really not sure who's going to kill you first. You're looking at this guy and that guy, and you're just like, whoa. And the little, you get the little walks. That light turned green, but mine still is red. I'm really not sure when I'm supposed to walk. And this simplifies everything. If it turned green, then you can walk. And so this is a design that we did for a bus rapid transit route that's being planned in the Salt Lake area. And the concept was to use one of these ellipses and put a transit station in the middle. And so because the doors to buses are on the right side, then you bring it in, cross over right here so that you can have a single station in the middle. So that's kind of nice. It's a lot like light rail that way. And then you carry on. And so this is where this transit station would go. Here's another one over here that is not a transit station. But what it does do is allows traffic to rotate around it and do this, so you get that benefit to both traffic and transit at the same time. This is the very same design applied at a different location, and shows how it can be quite context friendly. And because because you got to create this swing around, it creates an opportunity for landscape. And so it's kind of a gateway entry to the space. So you say, all right, I've just entered a different space. I need to slow down. In fact, it forces you to slow down these things. And so that's advantageous in a lot of ways too. And the high traffic ability as well as other things can just facilitate circulation so that a lot of intense land uses can grow up around that site. It's not limited anymore by accessibility in any regard, neither to traffic or to transit. another little bit about the context of that. We recently built one of these in Draper, Utah. It wasn't the ellipse design. It was a lot more engineering and cheap than the one that I prefer. But functionally, it functioned the same way. And the forecast in 2030 was if we didn't do something, we'd have 2 minutes of delay per car at the site. But with this design, we were able to reduce it down to 26 seconds of delay per car. This shows a concept of how you can string several of these ellipses together along a corridor. And if you can do that, then it allows you to take what's a left turn, continuous left turn lane, just an ocean of pavement in the middle that nobody uses except to turn left. And you can get rid of it. You can plan it with a nice planted median. And what you do then is instead of having these random driveways that come out and take a left, it's an unsafe and a slow maneuver because it's hard to get a gap in both directions. That then requires you to turn right. So this guy comes out of the driveway, turns right, goes around one of the nice ellipses, and it gets on. It's a safer maneuver, and it actually ends up being faster to do it because there is no delay getting out onto the street. The Utah Transit Authority is planning a bus rapid transit. I swear they're planning like 100 bus rapid. I don't know how many is on the long range plan, but it's almost too many. They have 20 or 30 different routes planned. And one of the ones they want to build soon is this one. And this was a concept that was studied to try to see how to make traffic compatible with the bus. So let's see. Okay.
Yep, thanks. Kind of reminding us again here of what we're trying to achieve with bus rapid transit. Attractive, frequent, and most importantly, reliable, minimize delay, create nice spaces, keep everybody moving, and scale the investment in time and in space. We can do that in several ways. As far as bus rapid transit on the street itself, we can put bus rapid transit in the street, in the middle of the street, as in this case. We can create exclusive lanes for buses. They can be one-way, they can be reversible, they can be two-way. They can be very exclusive, right-of-way separated, or they can be mixed in with traffic. We can create spaces on the shoulder, expand the bus on shoulder system that's in place currently in the triangle and working well to serve arterial shoulders as well. Maybe out in the periphery, but that certainly is a low-cost option to keep the bus moving on the congested arterials that do have shoulders. Signal priority should be part of our toolkit. I was making the case before that if we put up a synchronized street, we may not need to go to signal priority, but it is still there for us if we wanted to do that. And in some places that can be very helpful to keep the bus moving. I'm a big fan of Q-jump. Mike slipped that in a little while ago. That's a very short stretch of extra pavement that allows the bus to get around a queue that's built up at a traffic signal. So here's conceptually what that would look like. Here's one in real life in a downtown area, and the circle over here meant to show the green signal for the bus, while the autos in the other lanes still have a red, just to get the bus out in front, minimize their delay at the signal. Well, Q-jumps could work very well on a synchronized street, to bring them back to that as well as the designs that Mike mentioned. But I wanted to show where it would be on a synchronized street. Could be on the median side, if we had some of Mike's bus stations in the median with those ellipses. Q-jump here to get around that signal, Q-jump here to get around that signal. Left turning traffic to get around the Q-jump over there, there would be room for everybody if the median is wide enough. and could also have a queue jump on the right side with the right turn bay shifted to sort of get them out of the way and the queue jumping traffic coming through the signal and back in over here. This is a way to stage very well the investment along a corridor, bring in the treatment for a few hundred feet at a critical spot, and not have to rebuild the whole corridor, buy more right-of-way, expand in a very expensive way. Keep the bus moving. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the elephant in our region, and that is Capitol Boulevard. If we can treat that and get the buses moving and keep the traffic moving on that, we probably can just about anywhere.
All right, so this is kind of a hypothetical situation. Lucky for me, I'm not from your town. I have no idea what's already happened or what the possibilities are, so I just said, all right, I'll just look at this Capitol Boulevard, which I don't know much about. So what if we did an extreme road makeover, you know, brought in those guys from ABC and said, just in 2 days, make it into something amazing. And here's a $100 million to do it with. Yeah. And so sounds great, huh? Let's do it. So if you want to catalyze quality mixed-use development, such as this kind of thing around here, then you have to really create a quality circulation system and also use form-based codes so that the market can respond to the infrastructure that you lay down and get that. So here's a concept that I took a look at. Looked on Google Earth and said, hey, Capitol Boulevard, wherever this is, I'm not sure, but it looks like, at least from aerial photos, it's not so impossible to go to the back side of that and create a little bit of a local road. It wouldn't be much. It'd be a collector street, just small, narrow, and windy. But the point is that when that type of development moves in, and one of the things that'll help it move in, is the ability of the general area around here to just maneuver the space without having to get on Capitol to do it. So you can bring in truck deliveries from the backside. You can serve any parking lots along there from the backside, and kind of keep that front face the beautiful side, you know. And it's the Las Vegas casino method, right? They want all of their ugly stuff to be on the back and keep the nice road the way it is. And so that's one possibility, and I would say this concept of flanking arterials with a backage road, a parallel backage roads on both sides, is a great concept. If any place in your region that has arterials that have not developed yet, there's land along them, there ought to just be a requirement that says development must conform to a backside parallel street. It has to include that, and that'll guarantee the long-term, it doesn't guarantee, but it really helps the long-term success of that road. So here's those same ellipses kind of taken and applied to parts of Capitol. Zooming in on some spot on Capitol, I don't even remember where I put this, but it's a wide road. There's a lot of room there. It already has pretty good median. The setbacks of existing properties are good. So you could fit these in, even with 3-4 lanes of traffic each direction. You can still fit in a good median without straying very far off into existing development. And it looked to me like you could do a lot of them without hitting any buildings at all. So this dark blue shows how you might have a fixed guideway dedicated for transit that way. That's the same idea as stringing together several of those, using some of the quadrant concepts, probably looking for the synchronized street opportunities every once in a while. Another concept here is a breezeway concept, and what this is in places where there's enough demand to warrant a freeway, and maybe you say, wish we coulda, shoulda, woulda had a freeway if only, but it just isn't, it's just not an option on the table anymore. One of the possibilities that you can do is great separate some key intersections by going down under, probably not over because it creates that ugly factor that's really not compatible with the environment. But you go down under, you don't even need to go too deep. You could say this is a commuter lane. Trucks and other things have to stay on the arterial, same as before, to minimize our expense and just kind of that down thing. And what you get is a lane that was carrying 700 vehicles before can now carry around 1,900, 2,000, something like that. So it's effectively 2.5 lanes. Just one of these lanes would be like 2.5 before. And they're moving not fast. This is not a freeway. It is a freeway and it isn't a freeway, so let me say it like that. We think of a freeway, we say, I'm going to be able to drive 75. Not on this. On this thing, you intentionally set the design speed to be pretty much the same as the traffic right next to it, because once they come out of that little duck under, they're back on the arterial street again. So you're talking about 40, 30, 35 if you're in a pedestrian context environment. But the beauty of it is that even at a slow speed, it's high throughput, which means you can get rid of some of the existing lanes to use for other uses, or you just have a nice smooth corridor. And even at 35, the average speed I'd capital today at peak hours, I would venture to guess is probably closer to 15, or 15 to 20 when you factor in delay and signals and everything else. And so getting up to 35, 40, people say, what a relief. It is. It feels free flow. I'm not delayed. I'm not going fast, but I'm also not delayed, and I'll get to where I'm going. So, and that type of context, I guess, is a possibility in that. So,
So a few others, and then we'll wrap up here, talk about a few other corridors. Glenwood has every feature that you'd expect in a good synchronized street. It's got one bottleneck right at the beginning at the lead mine, and that's going to need a high dollar solution. But all the way out for the rest of Glenwood, if you look at the demands and you look at the available right-of-way, it screams at you as a synchronized street that, again, could keep the bus moving on schedule reliably. And it's got some of the backage road connections as well that Mike was talking about. Is kind of continuing to swing around the clock dial there, NC 54 corridor out through Cary and Morrisville. It looks like a variety of treatments would be possible out there. There's excess capacity at many places out there that we could take advantage of that and get the bus moving very well. Some potential parallel routes that have some excess capacity that could work. Maybe an intersection treatment or two, quadrant or continuous flow intersection or something like that would be needed at a couple of spots. But lots of current and future potential in that corridor to keep the buses and the vehicles moving well. Western Boulevard, we've got a free shot out to NC State, Avent Ferry, for buses and whoever else wants to enjoy that. And then a couple of spots along Western that would need some intersection treatments along the lines we're talking about here, and probably some queue jumps to keep the bus moving through those spots, but certainly nothing that's impossible along that corridor heading out to the west. Back up to the north along Six Forks, it's tight, but could be a synchronized street to make better use of that two-way left turn lane that's in the middle, and find some places, if not for Mike's median ellipses, then at least for some right side of the road loons to help the U-turns be made there and keep the bus moving on the synchronized street. Out east, Newbern Avenue, with excess capacity that we should take advantage of now while we have it, get something in place there. Probably only a couple of spots along Newbern that would be really need some extra capacity or need something in place to keep a bus moving through there. And then certainly bus on shoulder on 264 freeway. It seems like that would work real well for buses going further east. And finally, South Raleigh, with all kinds of potential there. South Saunders, again, all the makings of a wonderful synchronized street, but excess capacity on Wilmington between downtown and a connection with South Saunders, where we could actually probably convert one of the existing lanes right now to be a bus lane and get buses to the south quickly if we needed to. So any point of the compass here around Raleigh, radiating out from downtown, we've got good potential with several of these different treatments that look like they could work. And kind of bringing things to a wrap here with a moment on crosstown routes, such as Millbrook or Raleigh Boulevard, Tryon Road, they, in a world of synchronized streets anyway, we sever some of those connections. So have to be concerned about that and how would we keep a bus or indeed an auto rolling well on a crosstown route. And one of the things is to engineer and plan well so we put the right treatment in the right place, not to disadvantage those travelers too much. But another treatment would be to tack to the right. I'm not a sailor, but I think we borrowed that from the yachting community. Keep tacking to the right, take advantage of the way the synchronized street is set up, and keep the buses and vehicles moving that way. And if you look around the map in Raleigh, there's actually some opportunities to do something like that and build those things as well, so that we don't disadvantage the crosstown routes all that much. Big point here, and I think I'm keep hold of this and wrap things up, is there's lots of potential here for moving buses delay-free on the Raleigh Arterial network. Synchronized streets in the corridors, along at the intersections that are not particularly high stress. Some things like Q jumps where we need it, but then the median U-turn ellipses, backage roads, the quadrant intersections, the town center intersections, sprinkled in places where those could help as well. The whole point here, again, is to create a large bus network with frequent arrivals that are reliable and on schedule. And the potential is really here to do that throughout the community. And then integrate that in with the regional facilities that are on the freeway and on whatever exclusive right-of-way that we could muster. And then the really neat thing about buses on freeways or on arterials is it could happen tomorrow. And I look back at my time in Raleigh. I moved here in 1992. You know, dang, if we would have built 1 mile of bus lane per year in the 20 years I was here, what an awesome network we'd have by now. What we were doing, what we were thinking. Let's not let another 20 years go by and then have to have that same moment. We could start tomorrow to implement a lot of this stuff. Dedicated bus lane, I think we have hit that pretty well too. So let's put a wrap there. I think we've got the room till noon, and with time for questions, and Mike and I may or may not have the answers, but we'll happily listen to your questions.
Okay. First, let's give a hand for our presenters.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this, maybe I'll just speak to that. So the point is that when you dedicate a lane for buses, the public's like, really? A whole lane for just this one thing that only comes by every once in a while? We wanted to point out that it doesn't have to be for just one bus that comes along every once in a while. You can take van pools that people sign up for and qualify them to be in the lane. You can take first responders, police, fire, things like that. They get a free pass through that. They take it anyway, of course, but it becomes a way for them to get around congestion more easily and safely. Taxis, maybe, right turns, sometimes things like that. There's a way to make this more useful so the public feels better about it's not just a lane for a bus.
So what questions do we have for our presenters today? Yes, sir.
I got a question, and it's Maybe a question, a little bit of a comment, hearing the discussions you're talking about here, Mike. You get a lot of great ideas, and I think the idea of moving all the traffic better is an improvement for the buses at some point. I'm a little bit concerned that we're conflating the BRT with any kind of minor improvement for bus. BRT, in the larger sense, is a much more of a dedicated guideway, rubber tire, that runs independent of the traffic vehicles. It may cross the traffic at locations much like an LRT would. But many of the things you're describing here, I would put them more in the classification of enhanced bus service. It goes back even historically to what we used to call TSM, Transportation System Management. You're trying to squeeze as much capacity out of these. And my concern is, as we're kind of throwing a lot of these ideas up there, which are interesting and great to be looked at, that we may be confusing a lot of people as we go forward making decisions in the region here about whether light rail or BRT and all these details go forward, and almost putting this idea that BRT can be done quickly and easily when it may not be a true as we want to think about BRT. So I would rather see us put a little bit of a break in here between BRT and what I would call enhanced bus service or improved bus service, moving bus, because in many of the cases, even with your synchronized street, trying to fit that in there, in a lot of ways you're really talking, a bus lane is not a BRT in my mind. It's not fully formed with a fully formed station and the opportunities for developed around it. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about how we're moving forward, not only in this presentation, but in this series as a whole of the whole transit system and what fits and how they come together with it. I'd like to see how that BRT could fit in a synchronized street. Your lines look interesting when you get down to actually drawing on the map and how wide, because that's one of the challenges I'm facing on a project now with the city. So I guess see how that works and comes. I'd like to kind of raise that as a question and comment. Any response, I'd welcome you as well.
I'll just say it's a good comment. I mean, it's one of the questions that's come up about the definitions, and there are many, many different definitions of bus rapid transit. Certainly RTA has put one out there. We've heard that comment you've made before, not just from you, from others, and it's part of the ongoing dialogue of getting clarity out there, but also talking about the fact that bus rapid transit is flexible and can be implemented in a staged fashion. So probably two ways of looking at it.
Well, I'll mention a comment on that. One of the things that the federal government requires of any bus rapid transit project is that at least 50% of the path has to be a dedicated right-of-way. Otherwise, they don't